All right, today's lesson is 1.2 on decimals. We're still on our first unit, rational numbers. So keep in mind when we are working with decimals, whenever we are performing the operations for addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division, we're still going to follow the rules that we learned in our previous lesson for integers. All right, and then plus the ones we're going to go over today, the rules for decimals. So we'll start with adding or subtracting decimal numbers. And our first example here, we're going to do the sum. And our second example is for difference. The rule for adding or subtracting decimal numbers is we have to line up the decimals. All right, so line up all your decimal places, and then you're going to either find the sum or difference. And then once you have your answer, you place your decimal directly under the other decimals. All right, so here we have 3 numbers, and we have to find the sum. The sum, anytime you see the word sum, it means addition. All right, so let's set this up. Make sure we are aligning everything up correctly. So 82 decimal 635. All right, so we have 3 decimal places there. Next, we have 325.68. All right, so we have to line up our decimals like so and line everything up correctly. So 325, 3, 2, 5, and then 6, 8. And the last number is 53.47. 53.47. And then we can add. All right, so again, our decimal places are lined up. This is our tenths. These are our hundredths, our thousandths. These are our ones, tens, and hundreds. So everything is lined up. And now we can go ahead and start adding just like we've always done. So start from the right. So we end up with 5 plus 0 plus 0. So we end up with a 5. 3 plus 8 plus 7, 18. All right, so 4 plus 6 plus 6 plus 1, that gives me 17. And there's our decimal. Now we're adding our ones place. 1 plus 2 plus 5 plus 3, which is 11. 2 plus 5 plus 1. Oh, plus the 8. Remember to look at your place values there. So 8 plus 2 plus 5 plus 1. 16. And then 3 plus 1, which is 4. So your answer is 461, and then decimal 785. All right, so our next example is find the difference between these two numbers. We are still going to line up our decimal places, and anytime we see difference, it means subtraction. All right, so 7,836 decimal 25 minus 4,532, and then decimal 78. All right, so here you can practice your subtraction skills. So let's start. We have 5 minus 8, so we can't do that. So we're going to borrow. That becomes 15. This is going to become 11. And this is going to become 5. And now we can go ahead and subtract. So 15 minus 8, that gives me 7. 11 minus 7, that gives me 4. There's our decimal. 5 minus 2 is 3. 3 minus 3 is 0. 8 minus 5 is 3, and 7 minus 4 is 3. So our answer is 3,303.47. All right, so we have 0.5 plus the 4.5 plus the 7. So this is how it should look when you're adding. If you'd like to fill in with zeros, you can do that as well. If you want to put in 0.0, just to keep yourself organized, that's perfectly fine as well. So 5 plus 5 plus 0, that's 10. There's our decimal place. Then 4 plus 7 plus 1, which gives me 12. All right, so your answer is 12 or 12.0. Same thing. So for our next example here, it's a negative 5.8 plus 0.9 minus 1.9. So we're looking at our first two digits here, or first two numbers. We are looking at negative 5.8 plus 0.9. All right, so back to our addition rules for integers. When you have two different signs, negative and a positive, we subtract, and then we take the sign of the numerically larger number. All right, so our numerically larger number here is 5.8, so therefore our answer here will be a negative answer. So we're just going to subtract. So this we have to borrow, this becomes 18, and this becomes a 4. So 18 minus 9, that's 9. And then 4 minus 0, that is 4. So here, you have to remember that it's a negative answer. So our answer is negative 4.9. So I'm just going to put that in a box there so we know that's our answer. So next step now is we have negative 4.9, and it's minus the 1.9. So minus 1.9, like that. All right, so if we remember our rules, anytime we're subtracting, you're going to add the opposite. All right, so I'm just going to show you that. We're going to add the opposite. So we change the subtraction to addition, and we give this the negative sign. All right, so now addition, two signs are the same. Our answer will be negative, but now we're adding. All right, so we're adding 4.9 plus the 1.9, but we know our answer is going to be negative because it's a negative plus a negative. All right, so 9 plus 9, that is 18. 1 plus 4 plus 1, that gives me 6. All right, so our final answer is negative 6.8. All right, I'm just going to put it up here as well, negative 6.8. All right, we're looking at multiplication next, multiplying decimal numbers. So let's read our rule here. Whenever we are multiplying, the decimal moves to the left in the product, the same number of places that there were numbers behind the decimal in the multiplicand and the multiplier combined. Now that sounds very, very confusing. So my note here is do not line up the decimals when you're multiplying. You're just going to multiply like normal, and then I'll show you what to do with your decimal place at the end. All right, so our first number here is 4.54, and it's being multiplied by 2.5. All right, we do not line up the decimals for multiplication. So we're just going to multiply like normal. So you've been multiplying for years and years in math class, so we're just going to go over multiplying here. So 4 times 5 is 20, so I put the 2 up here, the 0 down. 5 times 5 is 25, plus the 2 gives me 27, so 7, 2, and then 4 times 5 is 20, plus 2, which is 22. Next, we're going to multiply with the 2 here, so I have to just put a 0 here for the place holder there. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 5 is 10. So I put a 0 here, and I put a 1 here. I just cross these off because I've already used them. Okay, and then 2 times 4 is 8. 8 plus 1 is 9. And now I'm just going to add those. 0 plus 0 is 0. 7 plus 8 is 15. 1 plus 2 is 3. And 2 plus 9 is 11. Now we have to figure out how many, like where are we putting our decimal? So count your decimal places. So here there's 2 decimal places. So I'm just going to put in brackets that there's 2 decimal places there. This one has 1 decimal place. There's 1 decimal place there. Okay, so 2 and 1 decimal place. That's a total of 3 decimal places. So when we put our decimal here, you're just going to go over 3. So from the very right, 1, 2, 3, our decimal place goes right there. So it's 11 decimal 350. On the right hand side is example 2. So here we're just noticing a pattern multiplication using the powers of 10. So here 2.54 times 10, that became 25.4. 2.54 times 100, that becomes 254. So notice how many places the decimal place is moving. 2.54 times 1,000, now that becomes 2,540. 2.54 times 10,000, that became 25,400. All right, so the decimal place is moving to the right, the same number of places as there are zeros. All right, so here we have 4.5 times negative 1.8. We know that when multiplying a positive and a negative, our answer will be negative. So down here, I've just made a note here for myself that the answer has to be negative in case we forget to do that. All right, so I've also set it up here already. So let's go ahead and multiply. So 8 times 5, that's 40. 1 times 5 is 5, plus 4 is 9. And then 1 times 5 is 5. Okay, put it down a 0. And then I just cross these off because we've already used them. So 8 times 4 is 32. 1 times 4 is 4, plus 3 is 7. And then 1 times 4 is 4. And now we can go ahead and add. So 0 plus 0 is 0. 9 plus 2, that's 11. 7 plus 5 plus 1, that's 13. And then 1 plus 4 is 5. All right, and we know our answer is negative. Put down your negative there. Count your decimal places. So here we have 2 decimal places, and here we have 1. So 2 decimal places there, 1 decimal place there, for a total of 3 decimal places. So 1, 2, 3, put our decimal place right there. So our answer is negative 5.310. And I'll just answer it here as well. 5.310. And that was a negative. All right, so next is dividing decimal numbers. So let's read the rule here. In division, we move the decimal to the extreme right in our divisor, and then move the decimal the same number of places to the right in our dividend before we attempt to find the quotient. So just remember your terms there. The quotient is the answer, and when we're setting this up like this, 8.3, that's our divisor, and the 21.58, that's our dividend. All right, so I'm just going to set this up so it's 21.58, that is the dividend. 8.3, that's our divisor. So when we are working with decimals, this divisor, we want to make it a whole number. So we're going to take this decimal place and move it until it becomes a whole number. So in this case, we're moving it 1 to the right to make it 83. And therefore, we have to move it the same number of decimal places in the dividend. So we're going to move this one decimal place as well. All right, so now if we were to rewrite this now, it looks like this. So 83, and the dividend is 215.8. All right, so now we just have to divide 215.8 divided by 83. All right, so we know 83 times 1 is 83. 83 times 2 is 166. 83 times 3 is 249. So we're going to use 2 because 83 times 3 goes over. So 83 times 2, that was 166. And then remember, our next step here is to subtract. So 215 minus 166. And then we bring down this 8. So subtract first. This gives me 49. Then we bring down our 8. So it becomes 498. And then we have to figure out what goes into 498 without going over. It's 83 times 6 gives me 498. So there's no remainder in this example. All right, so our quotient is 2.6. This is our remainder, the remainder of 0. This is our quotient. Our quotient is the answer. All right, so we'll just label that the quotient. All right, and our second example here on the right-hand side is just showing the pattern, what is happening when we are dividing using the powers of 10. So 25.4 divided by 10, it becomes 2.54. When we divide 25.4 divided by 100, it becomes 0.254, and the pattern continues. So what we see in division is the decimal place is moving to the left, the same number of places as there are zeros in the divisor. All right, so we are looking at this example here, negative 23.8 divided by negative 3.5, and we know negative divided by negative, the answer will be positive. So all I've done here is I moved 1 decimal place for the divisor, therefore I have to move 1 decimal place for the dividend. And this is what it looks like now. It's 238 divided by 35. All right, so closest to 238 without going over was 35 times 6. All right, so 35 times 6 is 210. And then we subtract, and that gives me 28. All right, so this is when you have to put a decimal place there and start adding zeros and then bring down the 0. All right, and now we have to get to 280 without going over, and it's 35 times 8 that we can use. Gives us exactly 280. All right, so 6.8 is our quotient. There's no remainder here as well. All right, and just double check your integers again. It was a negative divided by negative, so our answer is positive. So our answer is positive 6.8. All right, so the homework today is worksheet 1.2. You're only doing column 1 and you're only doing the odds. So give me 1 second here and I'll show you that.